What is going on, Shea Cell Army? Today, we're going to be discussing Bo Nickal. And the reason we're going to be looking at Bo is because he is fighting on UFC 300. And you know who else is fighting on UFC 300? Charles Oliveira. So, that's a good enough reason for me. Now, in the past, I've made some videos about Bo discussing why he hasn't been utilizing his wrestling that much in his career so far. Despite coming from a very similar background, he is not taking the Ben Askren approach to his career, which is just only stick to your wrestling, try to ragdoll everybody no matter what their style is, you stick to the exact same game plan, which is to wrestle them, which Bo is capable of doing. But he knows the sport has evolved a lot since Ben Askren. It is not a smart strategy to be one-dimensional anymore. It just isn't, because when you get to the top of each division, those guys are so well-rounded. If you have holes in your game, you're going to get exposed. And that's why Bo's been winning fights by knockout, hitting submissions off of his back. He's working on making himself a well-rounded mixed martial artist. And that's what makes Bo so exciting to watch. But I do not think that is what separates him from the rest of the pack in terms of MMA wrestlers. For one, everyone has been hyping up a Bo Nickal versus Khamzat matchup ever since he got to the UFC. Though I think recently that hype might be dying a bit because, Khamzat is slowly euthanizing his career. But other than that, it makes perfect sense. Khamzat's came into the UFC and has been dominating guys with his wrestling, so you gotta give him Bo Nickal, right? Well, yes, you do, but just as far as wrestling goes, they are not on the same level. Not even close. Bo Nickal was a 3-time NCAA Division I champion and a U23 world champion. Khamzat's got a couple of national titles in Sweden. Those two accolades are not comparable. Now, I'm not saying Bo is going to beat Khamzat in a mixed martial arts fight. As of now, Khamzat is the way more well-rounded fighter. You gotta kind of be looking down the line when you're picking Bo Nickal in this matchup. But there's actually another huge variable in all of this. Not just with Bo versus Khamzat, but Bo compared to a lot of MMA wrestlers today. And it doesn't get discussed very frequently. And that is a difference in styles, a different style of wrestling. Specifically, the difference between Folkstyle wrestling and Freestyle wrestling. Folkstyle wrestling is what is done here in America at the high school and the college level, while Freestyle wrestling is done in other countries and in the Olympics, which I think it's a little unfair that American wrestlers have to do Folkstyle their entire lives and then switch to Freestyle when they go to the Olympics. But to be fair, they are pretty similar. At least the name of the game is still the same. Take your opponent down, attempt to pin them. If you can't pin them, get points for takedowns and get-ups, and whoever has the most points at the end of the match wins. That's all the same. But there is one significant rule difference that breeds different kinds of wrestlers. And that is, in freestyle wrestling, if one guy gets taken down and nothing is happening, the ref will stand them up after 10 seconds. Turn on any freestyle match, this is what you're going to see. I guarantee it. One guy's going to get taken down, he's going to turtle, and he's going to stall, and then the ref lets them back up. Over and over and over again. While in folkstyle wrestling, the ref will not intervene at all. If you get taken down, you have to get back up. See, if this was freestyle, this poor guy would have got saved, but he's stuck here till the match is over. And it's for that reason that folkstyle wrestlers are the best in the world at pins, mat returns, and controlling their opponents, while freestyle wrestlers are the best in the world at getting takedowns. And that's because since the referee will keep standing them back up, it's whoever can consistently get more takedowns is going to win the match. So, for example, look up a Khamzat Chimaev wrestling match. You're probably going to see him cartwheeling over his opponent and shooting these power takedowns from outside. Well, look up a Bo Nickal wrestling match, and you're going to see him finding these pins through these crazy transitions. It's just a very different style. And the style difference is very evident in mixed martial arts. Yoel Romero is probably the most decorated freestyle wrestler the sport has ever seen. He trained under that rule set his entire life, was an Olympic silver medalist, and he had no issues getting takedowns. But as far as keeping his opponent down was something he didn't do very frequently. His fights with Robert Whittaker was a great example of this. And another guy to look at, Mateusz Gamrot. His ability to get deep on takedowns and to scramble is unparalleled. But when it comes to holding guys down and doing damage, he's a bit lacking in that area. I mean, for the most part, he just likes to grab a body lock and hold on to you for dear life as his opponent scoots to the fence and works their way up. But one of my favorite examples of folk-style wrestling in MMA, it's a bit of an old school example, but Phil Davis. He was a Penn State wrestler, he was an All-American, his record in college was 116 wins to 20 losses. Now, by no means is he anywhere even close to the level of Bo Nickal when it comes to collegiate wrestling, but still a very high-level wrestler. And when you look at his fight with Glover Teixeira, every time he got Glover down, it was a nightmare to try to get back up. Every time Teixeira built up a base, Davis would drive his weight forward, hitting a mat return. As soon as he would get Glover back to his knees, he would hook Glover's shin with his inside leg, ankle riding him. Also from there, he would grab his inside wrist, making it so hard to build a base. And on top of that, getting him stuck in cradles, just all around, absolute nightmare to try to stand back up. And this one might be a bit of a curveball, but another fighter that I think displays these skills to a world-class level would have been Khabib, which is funny because I wouldn't consider that for Islam Makhachev. Now, when you come across discussions of freestyle versus folk style online, there's an ongoing argument whether you consider Khabib a freestyle or a folk style wrestler. The truth is, he's neither of them. He never competed in either rule set. According to Khabib, the wrestling training he's done has been under freestyle rules, but what he's good at, what he specializes in, is not letting people stand back up. When you look at his fight against Abel Trujillo, where he broke the record for the most takedowns in a fight, it was because he kept hitting mat return after mat return after mat return after mat return. When he'd get guys down up against the fence, he wouldn't just grab a body lock and hang on for dear life. He would get higher than them, making them carry his weight. As soon as they would turtle, he'd grab a body lock and then drag them down. And look no further to the fact that Daniel Cormier said himself that he taught Khabib folk-style wrestling.
But are you the one who taught Khabib the wrist ride stuff?
So Khabib and them knew how to ride the wrist a little bit. What we did was I was showing him just collegiate wrestling. Ben,
yeah, folk style, because it's endemic
yes.
to folk style wrestling.
Yes.
So to me, there's no doubt the ability to not only take someone down, but also be elite at holding them down is an insanely valuable skill to have in MMA. And currently in the UFC, there's not very many top of the food chain folk style wrestlers, and I think that may have something to do with strikers currently dominating the sport. And you look at the fact that Bo Nickal is a specialist in this. His takedowns, his shots, they're not nearly as explosive as someone like Khamzat Chimaev's is. But his ability to pin his opponent, it's going to be unparalleled. You look at Bo's NCAA run his senior year, and you see how good he is at capitalizing off of his opponent's shots. Sprawls, circles to the back, hits an inside cradle to get the pin. And defensively, the way he was able to get space and dig an underhook after his opponent hit this perfect duck under, it was crazy. Looking 5-6 fights down the line, where Bo has all these skills and is also a very, very well-rounded fighter, it's a terrifying prospect. Very, very scary. And now this finally brings us to his fight against Cody Brundage at UFC 300. And I'm very excited for this fight, and that is because Cody Brundage is going to be the best fighter Bo has ever fought. Which isn't saying very much, I'll be honest. But I think we can see a lot of wrestling from Bo in this fight. Now, Cody was a pretty high-level Division II wrestler, and his striking isn't bad. It's not bad at all. And he does have power. He was able to drop Rodolfo Vieira in their fight. The best way I can describe Brundage is he's decent all around. I don't think he excels in any one area, but he's all around an okay fighter. We're going to have to call it like it is. Cody is being put out there to lose. That's just the fact of the matter. But like I said, his striking's not bad, and he actually has pretty good takedowns, but actually on the ground, he's pretty lacking. He has a pretty bad tendency to jump for guillotines that aren't really there. And his submission defense isn't great. There's a lot of times he'll give up his back, not do a very good job of fighting the hooks. Against the aforementioned Rodolfo Vieira, he jumped a pretty terrible guillotine and then gifted him the arm triangle. It just absolutely wrapped it up, put a nice little bow on it, and then handed it to him. So on paper, Bo Nickal should absolutely thrash him on the ground. That shouldn't be up for debate. And now, you'd think that Cody would just avoid going to the ground at all costs. I mean, that's probably the smart strategy for this matchup, but like I've said in the past, he doesn't have the best decision-making. So if he decides to jump guillotine, he's in pretty bad shape. But if not, it will be interesting to see how they match up on the feet. Because what's opened up Bo Nickal's striking a lot in his past matchups was the fact that his opponents were terrified of the takedown. It was all they were thinking of. So when Bo stepped in and landed a good shot, they weren't ready for it. But you'd think Brundage would be aware of the danger here. And in the past, we've seen him really go at guys with big shots, throwing body kicks and calf kicks and blitzing in with big hooks. The problem is, you blitz Bo Nickal like that, he's just going to drop underneath and hit an easy double leg. So in a matchup like this, when you're facing somebody as high level as Bo is with the wrestling, you gotta find that balance of trying to hurt him without overextending yourself, and that can be really hard to do. From what I've seen, I don't think Brundage is capable of doing that. But I would really like to see how Bo handles the calf kicks, how he handles the body kicks, how good his head movement is, but like I said, Brundage, if he overextends at all, he's gonna end up on his back, and he is not very good off his back. So, to me, Bo Nickal is an absolute lock for this card. Unless something catastrophic happens and he eats a shot right on the chin, he should steamroll this guy, and he will 100% be going on to my parlay. Same with Charles.